to a presentation from Continental Structural Plastics about the kind of teams that they are building to meet this need. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me? Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Zitney. I'm Director of Corporate Communications with Continental Structural Plastics. With me up here, I have Keegan Sullivan and Stephen Precious, and they're going to be adding a little bit to my presentation when I'm done. I have 3 quick slides, and then I'm just going to have a conversation with these two. They're both materials development engineers with my company. So, Continental Structural Plastics. We are not affiliated with the big Continental. We're actually a company that was started about 50 years ago. We are now owned by Tasian. That acquisition happened in 2017. We have about 4,200 employees working in 17 facilities in 5 countries. We're going to do about $726 million in sales this year with a goal of reaching $2 billion by 2030, and we're a very innovative company. We have a number of patents on both our processes and our materials. So what do? So we make composite panels, components for vehicles. The goal is to lightweight. We make anything from body panels to battery boxes, pickup boxes, underbody shields. I think the thing that makes CSP unique is the fact that we compound and create our own materials. We don't buy our raw materials from somebody and then mold them. We create our own raw materials, which is where these two come into play. So we can create any composite formulation based on what the customer needs. We have composites that are UV stable. We have composites that are flame retardant for battery boxes. So some of the programs that we're on right now that you will recognize are products on the road where we make almost the entire body of the Corvette. We make the pickup boxes for the Toyota Tacoma, the Honda Ridgeline. We're going to be making the carbon fiber box that's going to go in the GMC Sierra Denali, and we actually have that in our booth upstairs in the concourse. I encourage you to come up and take a look at it. We make the hardtop roofs on the Jeep Wranglers, and we're doing a number of underbody shields and and I wanted to mention the battery boxes too. We're on a number of electric vehicle platforms globally. In the United States, we're on the Volt and the Bolt, and we have the Bolt battery box up in our booth as well if you want to come up and take a look. So from an employment perspective, what we're really looking for are engineers, and I'm sure that everybody is looking for engineers. So we're looking for people to help out in program development, and we're also looking for people to help out in research and development. We also have a need for salespeople to join our commercial team, and it's really beneficial if people who join the sales team have some sort of an engineering background. And then there's always a need for interns and co-op students, and we have a number of co-ops working for us full-time now who started as co-op students and came back for a couple of years and now work for us, primarily in the R&D areas. And with that, we're going to talk about, not only why CSP, but why work in the automotive industry. And this is where Keegan and Stephen are going to come into play. So first, I'd like you to each just introduce yourselves and tell a little bit about your backgrounds.
So I'm Keegan Sullivan. I graduated from Purdue last May. Made the move out here to Detroit to work at CSP.
I'm Stephen Precious, and I'm a local here in the Detroit area. I went to Wayne State University for my chemical engineering degree, and after graduating college this past May, I joined CSP.
Thanks. Okay, Keegan, let's start with you. What skills do you think are important to gain in school, and how do they translate to the job?
I think it's important to gain both your hard and soft skills in college. When I talk about hard and soft skills, I mean being involved with clubs outside of just your hard sciences is going to give you those soft skills like leadership and the ability to work with a diverse group of people that you're going to see, especially in the automotive industry, because you're going to be working with a lot of different entities. And then it's also important to gain your hard skills. By that I mean getting involved with things outside of your classes as well, like research opportunities or co-ops and internships are also a great way to gain that experience.
Good insight. Thanks. Stephen, why don't you tell us what your average day is like?
So in terms of my average day at work, I typically do one of two things. I'm either making new SMC or I'm testing SMC that I made in days prior. So in days that I'm making SMC, what my day typically entails is showing up to work in the morning and doing a lot of my prep work for the day, which involves making sure I know what material I'm going to make sure I have my formula set so I make the correct material. I'm setting up our SMC line with the correct parameters, so it's working at the right speed, putting on the right fiber, whether it be glass fiber or carbon fiber, ensuring that all that is set up so when I do run my material, it's a correct weight, correct thickness, and it has the correct fiber content, so it performs the way I want it to. After I do all my prep work, I actually go ahead and make the SMC, which involves using that formula to mix up the resins and additives we have into a batch, and then we run the SMC line and make that material. On days I'm not making new SMC, what I typically do is test old SMC that I made, which involves molding it, doing things like mechanical testing, cure analysis, things of that nature, understand how the material performs, and then I do a lot of statistical analysis on that, and from there I make decisions on what I'm going to do next. So that's my typical day.
Good, thanks. Keegan, back to you. What advice would you give to someone who maybe wants to get into this field?
So I came from a very non-automotive industry family. I didn't know that working in the automotive industry could include anything besides working for any of the big three. So once I learned about these other jobs within the field, I realized that there was a whole wealth of positions you could hold outside of just working for those big three that are going to be part of the automotive industry, but in the tier 1 through 3 supply regions. One of the advantages of that is you tend to work for smaller companies. And by that, you end up with a more family-like structure. We're going to have an opportunity to pursue not only a variety of different projects, but also be able to work on your own specific projects, which is something that's been made available to both of us at CSP.
And Stephen, what kind of experience did you need to get your job?
So in terms of experience that I needed to get my job here at CSP, I think one of the most important skills I had to have was skills in statistical analysis. Working R&D and testing materials on a daily basis, you need to understand how to collect data and how to interpret that data in a way that gives you some insight into where to go next. So statistical analysis was very important in that regard. And piggybacking off of that, another skill was DOE, which is design of experiments, and that is really crucial for people in the lab setting and R&D setting, which allows you to set up your experiments in an efficient way in terms of using as little resources as possible, making it as time efficient as possible. And I had that experience coming in from my past internship co-ops throughout college. So those skills are really what helped me get the job at CSP, and they have allowed me to do my job well so far.
Good, thanks. Do either of you have any last bits of advice or tips for anybody looking to get into this field?
My advice would be to approach as many companies as possible and really learn what they have to offer to you. Part of one of the important things about a job search that is often overlooked is the receiving end of you doing a interview or going up to talk to somebody at a career fair. It's important to learn what that company is about, what their MO is, and what they offer to their employees to decide whether it's going to be a good fit for you. Because if you go into a company just based off of name or off of salary or off of job title, you may end up in a situation where you're not being given back what you put in.
Stephen?
And to add to that, in terms of younger audiences who are applying to companies for the first time, maybe they're in college or about to graduate from college, I think it's really important to make the best use of your time while in college. So that includes things like participating in undergraduate research or doing internship and co-ops, anything that gives you some actual skills that you can use to not only better yourself, better your abilities, but also to put in your resume to help you get in the door and try to convince people that you are capable of doing a job that you are applying for.
Great, thanks you guys. Does anybody have any questions for me, for Stephen, for Keegan about CSP, about our jobs? Yes.
So working in materials development, are you pretty, working with materials development, are you typically, like you're focused on plastics, do you ever work with like other material like archetypes like metals, for example, like, or are you just pretty exclusively working with plastics?
So CSP is in the name. We're primarily plastics, but just saying that we're just plastics is a bit of a misleading statement because, I mean, right now I work on two different sets of projects. One is a flame retardant battery box, and the other one is a UV resistant truck box material. So while you'll be working primarily with polymers, you're going to have an opportunity to branch out within that and work with many different applications for it and many different formulations with different chemical structures, different additives. So you're going to get more exposure to types of plastics, but it's all going to be plastics.
Thank you.
Question. What do you think suppliers like CSP or other companies in the industry can do to make working in the industry more attractive? Are there things we can do to change the perceptions? I mean, it sounds like you guys love what you do, and are working on some pretty cool stuff. But what are other things the industry could do?
Well, in terms of that question, one thing that CSP does well that I think has really made me enjoy my time at CSP is having the freedom to test out what you want to do. Since I work in R&D, my job is to develop new materials, and at my job I have the freedom to try whatever I want to try. If I have an idea, I can put it into practice and test it out. That type of freedom allows me to not only enjoy my job, but allows me to really put my skills to the test and try to develop materials that I may not be able to do if I was stuck to a more rigid schedule. So it's allowing people to have that freedom to try what they think will work, I think is very important for that.
And then to add to that, I think it's exposure is probably the next most important thing. I didn't know, again, I came from a very non-automotive family. No one would be typically described as a car person in my family. So outside of the big three, I didn't know that there were careers in the automotive industry. So getting representatives to career fairs at colleges, putting on talks at these career fairs, even if it's just to a handful of people, is going to be a better way to reach out to these college kids, whether they be in their freshman and sophomore year looking for internships and co-ops, or in their senior year looking for full-time employment.
Anybody else?
What do you think about future of plastics, considering environmental issues?
So I can speak a little bit to that. Right now we're doing a lot of work within the Eurozone, and they have very strict environmental regulations as far as what can be in and then what can be off-gassed from the plastics. So we do a lot of work with adjusting the formulations of the plastic to make sure that they're safer for people. But we're also working in our advanced R&D on methods of taking that plastic and recycling it back so we can use it again in other applications. So we're looking at sustainability issues as well as environmental issues in the company to try and stay ahead of that curve.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you.